3 more after this one. Yowza. Hello friends and welcome to day 22 of Drenched in Wonder Cannabis Conversations. We are well and truly on the home stretch now, friends, closing in on the final few days of this whole conversation. And of course, it's a conversation that I'll be having long after I finish recording these videos. But I do feel it is a very important time for this conversation. And for whatever reason, it's the one that I wanted to have right now. Now, it is also the last few days of the Kickstarter campaign for the first edition of Drenched in Wonder, which, as you probably know by now, is my first book and the true story of my experience with cannabis. I'm really proud of it. Give it a look at drenchedinwonder.com. A few days left on the Kickstarter campaign. So today, episode 22, we're talking about something that we've touched on a little in previous episodes, but something that I really wanted to dive deeper into. We're talking about cannabis as a tool for self-knowledge, self-understanding, self-growth, self-acceptance, and ultimately self-love. This is the really good side of the whole kind of mental health discussion. Is cannabis a friend or a foe when it comes to mental health? Because as we know, it's not quite as simple as, fitting into one or the other. It can be both. What I find that cannabis does is that it gives me a bird's eye view of my own self, my own situation, my own thoughts, the world that I kind of exist in. And in that way, cannabis can be very helpful in just noticing certain things that perhaps we'd normally not notice, perhaps things that are just kind of subconsciously there. For example, the inner critic. We've all got one. And for the most part, I find that mine just kind of sits on my shoulder, kind of like I'm largely unaware of it, and kind of just reminds me of all these little insecurities. And, particularly for artists or creative people, this inner critic can be kind of debilitating for what we're trying to do. Of course, for most of us, there is just so much that happens in the subconscious, Most of us perhaps don't even realize that our inner critic is saying these things. We just kind of like go along with it. And of course, these other emotions and feelings and kind of gut reactions that are all just kind of like programmed to happen that we don't necessarily notice. But again, with cannabis, being able to take this somewhat more elevated approach and to kind of see these thought patterns that are occurring and these little cheeky things like the inner critic, like our sense of fear, like our anxiety, we can notice all of these things that little bit easier. And then, of course, once we've noticed that, we then have a choice. It gives us the chance to confront some truths about our insecurities, about our habits or our patterns of thinking or our old beliefs. And through it all, we kind of get back in touch with these parts of ourselves that may have been a little lost or, we'd forgotten about. And it's a very beautiful, very kind of individual and very personal thing. It's not about like affirmations, even though like that can be helpful as well, of course. For me at least, it's more about seeing myself clearly, even like the darkest parts and the scariest parts. And with all of that, still choosing acceptance and self-kindness and self-love. Needless to say, it can all be very, very healing, very just like fulfilling and nourishing. And of course, it can be overwhelming and discomforting. But if it's truth for us and we're willing to go towards it openly with this approach of seeking self-knowledge and always with kindness to these parts of ourselves, what an incredible experience it can be. Of course, as always, it affects everyone slightly differently, and choosing the right timing, the right dose, the right environment. Is this something that we do with other people or something that we explore alone? This is all important to give consideration to. What I find, and one of the reasons that I feel balanced use is so important, balancing the time that we are under the influence with the time when we're not, is that we can have a lot of these internal conversations. And this is really great and really helpful because ultimately it is kind of like mind renovation, We're noticing and then understanding and accepting. But then, of course, the importance of balancing that and coming back down for air so that we don't get stuck in this kind of endless internal loop. But know thyself. What that can give us is more meaning and more growth and more just understanding and more willingness to show up to the world as the people we actually are. And friends, as always, we don't necessarily need cannabis to achieve this. There are so many ways that we do this on a daily basis already. Maybe we do meditation or yoga or play sports or learn an art form. All of these are forms of self-growth, obviously. And pairing it with any of the above can kind of enrich the experience more. What do we learn when we explore art under the influence or when we play sports under the influence? I'm not saying do that, just to be clear. A final thought, friends. It's not that cannabis changed who I am, but it just gave me a chance to see this person from a new perspective and to find a new knowledge of this person and a new appreciation and ultimately a new love. Or thank you for joining me for this episode, friends. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We've only got a few more of these left to go. And in the next episode, we're going to be talking about the people who are against cannabis. The people who don't agree that cannabis is the doorway to wonder and excitement and curiosity that some of us do. Until then, friends, as always, be safe, be smart, and very, very excellent to yourself and to everyone else.